So, you guys know that I I started podcasting. I don't think I started podcasting with the idea or the notion that I would be as vulnerable as I have been with you guys. That was never a part of the goal. Like that was never a initial thought when it came to like, oh, this is what I want to do. It was always like, I think I'm entertaining. I want to share my interesting, entertaining experiences with the world. And then through starting the podcast and then eventually becoming a sex coach, I I started the podcast and I felt like I had a responsibility to be ethical, to not be someone who was just talking about sex and the type of sex that I was having, but to really explore and study sex and then share an enlightened version with you guys. So it wasn't just about me doing a bunch of wild, crazy things or whatever, or not even so wild. It wasn't about me just telling you guys whole stories and about the fun night outs. It was never only about that, right? Of course, there's some jokes, there's some entertainment, but I I knew early on with podcasting that I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the reason that I wanted to talk about the good, bad, and ugly about sex is because I had a lot of very ugly experiences with sex. I had a lot of bad experiences with sex. So, how can I talk about sex as if it's only good if my experiences were not all good? Welcome to Her None Matters, the podcast that dives headfirst into all things sex, pleasure, and empowerment. I'm Jody, your unapologetic guide to a more liberated sex life. Here we break down taboos, celebrate sexuality, and explore what it means to truly own your pleasure. So whether you're curious, kink-friendly, or just looking for ways to spice things up, you're in the right place. Now let's get to it. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be real. I wanted you guys to feel me, right? And even if you don't feel me, that's cool too, but I wanted y'all to feel me. Because I think by me being my authentic self, y'all fuck with that, right? Like, you're able to see my humanity. You're able to maybe relate to what I'm saying or feel some type of human connection to what I'm saying. Whether you've experienced something similar in the stories that I tell, or if you just like living vicariously through me. I think I learned early on the importance of cultivating a community with you guys. I show up for you guys. The people that listen to my show are all over the place, right? So shout out to the loyal listeners in Texas, because y'all in Texas, y'all fuck with me and I love that, right? So shout out to y'all in Texas. Shout out to y'all on the East Coast. I got a lot of Philly and New York listeners and listeners in Atlanta. I got some listeners in Australia. If you listening from a different country, shout out to you. I checked my numbers. I got people in Canada, Australia, all over the place. Like, I want you guys to feel seen because I see you. I see you. What I've noticed is that even though we all come from different walks of life, right? There's a commonality in our experience. There's a human element to all of our experiences that even if we don't have the same experience, we can at least see each other's humanity. I'm a sex coach, so I talk with clients all the time about their sexual background and what they've experienced, and they say things like, "I thought I was alone. I I thought I was the only one." right? We don't normalize conversations around sex because we think something's wrong with us, right? Now, of course, shame and social historical constructs that were projected onto us and are not really our own ideologies around sex, but were basically bestowed upon us. That aside, it's hard for us to have conversations around our experiences if we think we're alone. And so, a big part of what I want to do with our community is shed light on our diverse experiences and our diverse sexual experiences, and looking to find the humanity in that, right? Because a lot of our experiences are not tied to a social economic standing. It's not tied to racial, ethnic, or national barriers. It's not a man identifying versus woman identifying thing. It's not a gay, straight, lesbian thing. It's a human thing. A lot of us have very human experiences. And so with our community, I want us to feel safe. Now, I'm not saying that this podcast or this community is for everyone. It's not. However, if you are someone that has had a history of feeling like you don't belong, or like you can't speak up, or like you're you don't feel seen, you feel marginalized in your sexual expression, whether it be through exploring kink or fetishes, and you've had a history of shame, but you want to break away from that. That's what this community is for. I feel now more than ever, community and seeing each other's humanity is so important. So important with what's going on in the world. I I will always prioritize and scream to the top of the mountains that prioritizing female pleasure is important. So, of course, with the shift from provocative to her nut matters, that's me really embodying that. It's me highlighting the fact that while provocative had its place, my mission is so much bigger than that. It's a movement. It's a radical movement where female pleasure is not put on the back burner. And we are bringing female pleasure and prioritizing female pleasure because it has never been a priority. Women have never, and not, of course, when I'm speaking about this, of course, there are some women that have been sexually satisfied and whatnot, of course, right? We've never really had the permission to live in that way, though. And that is why this is so important. I was having a conversation with a close friend of mine, and I told her that, like, I was rebranding and that I was shifting away from provocative to Her Nut Matters. And she was like, oh, you should do a His Nut Matters episode. To which I told her, no, I won't. I will not talk about how a man's orgasm matters. This is not a all nuts matters movement, right? This is about her, right? It's about her. Women's value, or lack thereof, has been tied to her pussy. But I'll never do an episode on a man's nut mattering, because male pleasure is not the reason for the orgasm gap. It's not the reason for the pleasure gap. Men know that their nut matters. They don't need a movement. They gonna get theirs regardless of whether or not a woman does. So similar to when people say, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is how I look at it, because I'm not going to get into the whole Black Lives Matters versus All Lives Matters, right? Even though it's a very similar concept. It's a very similar concept as to why I refuse to talk about men's pleasure mattering, right? The focus needs to be put on female pleasure because of the nature of women. So what do I mean by that? Women, we are multipliers. We are reciprocators, naturally. You give us a house, make a home. That's in our nature, right? Now, of course, there are going to be some women that fall outside of that. There's always some outliers, right? But most women will multiply and reciprocate whatever you give us. You give us bullshit, we're going to multiply. Give us something amazing, we're going to multiply, right? But that also, of course, comes with the healed woman, the woman that has done the work on herself and knows who she is, right? If that's in our nature, if you prioritize our pleasure, do you think we just gonna sit back and accept that without trying to reciprocate, without trying to please you? Because here's the thing, a lot of women are naturally submissive and subservient. Like, we are of service. What can I do for you, right? That's a lot of women's nature. A lot. And so if, on a grand scheme of things, if this is a feminine trait, a feminine character to multiply and reciprocate and feed into something, if you prioritize our comfort, our safety, our sexual satisfaction, that gives us the freedom and the space to reciprocate that. A lot of men who fear female sexuality also don't prioritize their pleasure and don't care about foreplay, won't engage in it. If you ask them, oh, y'all know my favorite stat, foreplay should last 18 to 40 minutes. People like that feel like that's too long. It's not worth the effort. And that's a very sad reality that we live in. And it's also why the pleasure gap exists. There's no reason that 80% of women, well, I can't say there's no reason why. It is crazy for there to be 80% of women not experiencing an orgasm. If more time was put into foreplay and the woman was truly in a aroused state, she would have a greater chance of having an orgasm. Like, I've said this before, there's a story that's being told when you ask men about how long foreplay should last, and they don't think that it's even necessary. So some of them is like 0 minutes. It's not necessary. When we know it is. Like, we have the studies, we have the data to support it. 18 to 40 minutes isn't an opinion. We know that that's how long it takes for the blood to go to the clitoris and for it to be fully engorged. So if it takes 18 to 40 minutes for a woman to be erect and ready for penetration, why would you want some unready pussy? Why would you want some pussy that's not all the way ready for you to penetrate? Like, that don't make no sense to me. Like, I'm not finna cook a meal. I'm not finna, and then halfway, because I can't wait, I'm gonna only half cook my food and just eat it like that. Like, even though it's not ready, y'all trying to bite into hot pockets that's hot on the outside and cold on the inside. That's what it is. That's what it is. Pussy is like a hot pocket. You want it to be evenly warmed up. Pussy is like really any food that needs to be all the way warmed up. Like put the pussy crock pot. It's like pot roast, whatever the fuck you want to compare it to. Why would you want some pussy that's not ready? Why would you want some uncooked pussy? Why would you you eat your steaks well done? Why do you want some rare pussy? Please help me understand that. Please, for the life of me, please help me understand that. And I want to say that the reason for that is that you don't know that you don't value it. You don't value pussy. There's no value there. If you did, you would prioritize pleasing the pussy. I think it's also, we know there's been so many dick studies. There've been so many studies on dicks. Y'all know I love dicks. Love dicks. A dick doctor. I love dicks. Because I'm a heterosexual woman who enjoys, being penetrated. However, even someone who loves dick as much as me still needs 18 to 40 minutes. I'm still a woman. I'm still someone who wants to be turned on. And if you can't put in the time and effort to do that, you don't value me. You see me as someone that you can just masturbate with me. Because that's what you're doing. Like, if you don't care about my pleasure in that situation, how is that any different than you masturbating? Because when you masturbate, you are prioritizing your own pleasure, right? What you need me here for if you don't care about if I'm sexually satisfied? You don't need me here. You can sexually satisfy yourself and save both of us the time. And of course, there's countless other reasons as to why I would never do a his nut matters episode or whatever. But mainly it's because of the fact that female pleasure is not prioritized. It's not even valued. It's genuinely not valued. Women are not seen as sexual beings. The huge myth that for whatever reason is still plaguing us is the idea that women are not as sexual as men. And that's absurd. Because the reason that women are not expressing themselves sexually like men is because of shame, social historical constructs that limit the way in which we're able to show up sexually. Because if we were seen as human, as sexual beings, there wouldn't be that much of a difference between our sexual expressions and the sexual expression of men. And that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to, regardless of where you are in the world. Women have to navigate life in a different way than men. I guess we don't have to. We've been forced to, right? We've been forced to. And so a huge part of being able to take some of that power back and feel sexually liberated and sexually free is to say, fuck what we know about sex. You really have to deconstruct your notion of what sex is and what pleasure is. And then define it on your terms. Define pleasure on your terms. I think once we kind of get to that reflective period, of course, that mindset shift has to take place first. But once we get to that point of reflection and understanding the ways in which our views of sex were never our own, so that we can change it, now we're able to just truly be free in our sexuality and our sexual expression. And when you know who you are, when you're confident in who you are, is nothing that someone can do to make you feel ashamed of that. But in order for that to happen, you have to deconstruct the very thing that caused you shame to begin with. Men's pleasure has always been like the center of sex. Like sex literally sex has been viewed for so long as something that men do to women and something that women allow men to do to them. That's why a lot of women don't love sex. They view sex as a chore, something that they have to do because they're in a relationship. A lot of us have had that mentality at one point or another. I've told y'all before, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I've told y'all before, I had to really take a reflective moment to realize that I was having sex and I was not enjoying it, and realizing what enjoyment meant. What did it mean for me to have a good, pleasurable experience with sex? So I want you guys. Of course, I always want y'all to walk away kind of like reflecting and thinking about what I'm saying. But I want you guys to think about how things in the world have, for however long, you could pick like a time period, maybe, the last 5 years, or go back to your early 20s or whatever. Pick a time frame. Think about the way in which you view sex. Think about the influences of your worldviews. Think about what events or experiences took place for there to be a shift or for you to stand firmly in your current beliefs. And then I challenge you to define what the best sex of your life is. What do you want your sexual legacy to be? Like when people think about sex with you, what will they say? What would they think? I know as a woman, I'm a pleaser. That's the energy that I bring. I feel like if I was a man, I would still be a pleaser. Like if I was me, Jody, but as a dude, I feel like I would prioritize female pleasure, because as a woman, I prioritize the pleasure of my partner, but I also prioritize my own pleasure because I get pleasure from pleasuring my partner. So it's a cycle, right? And I think that, and this is why there won't be a His Nut Matters episode, because that's not necessary. But if men began to prioritize women's pleasure and found pleasure just from pleasuring them, they in turn would feel pleasure. And we know that women are marginalized. Like they're the group that needs the focus anyway. So yeah. That's all I got for this episode. I think that it's time for us to take a radical look at the way we sexually express and how we sexually identify and how we define sex. I think that's the only way we'll be able to shift from those limiting beliefs to liberating ones. So, as always, I want y'all to really think about what pleases you. And I hope that you're able to reimagine sex on your terms. So that's all I got for y'all. I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in to Her None Matters. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the pleasure with others. Follow us on Instagram at Her None Matters to stay updated on everything we have going on. Remember, pleasure is power. Go out there and own yours. Catch you next time.